end our meeting with the national anthem, and then we'll open with the word of prayer. Stand and sing of Zambia, proud and free, land of wake and joy in unity, victors in the struggle for their right. We won freedom's fight. Oh, one, strong and free, Africa is our own motherland, fashioned and blessed by God's good hand. Let us all our people join as one, brothers under the sun. Oh, one, strong and free, one land, one nation is our cry. Dignity and peace needs Zambia's sky, like a noble eagle in its flight. Zambia, praise to thee, oh, one, strong and free. Praise be to God, praise be, bless our great nation. Free men we stand under the flag of our land, Zambia. Praise to thee, oh, one, strong and free. Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness. Thank you that your mercies are new each and every morning. And thank you for bringing us together as we engage with the media and members of the public as we look at matters pertaining to the energy sector in our country. We commit, Lord, the various speakers that have been lined up at this engagement. We commit them into your hands, that you anoint their lips with oil, that everything they will say will bring clarity to the many questions that members of the public have regarding our electricity sector in our country. We give you praise and we give you honor this morning. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. Thank you very much. We may kindly take our seats. I noticed that we are learning to sing the national anthem, and most of us are still yet to learn the words of the national anthem. I heard yesterday our president making this appeal that we need to be patriotic to our nation. Therefore, the national anthem should be our mother tongue as we sing it every time. Thank you very much. At least I heard some voices from a good number. Congratulations. At this particular time, I would like to call upon Media Director from the United Party for National Development, Mr. Mark Simue, to just come and give the opening remarks as we begin our meeting this morning. My name is Cosmas Tileshe. I'll be your Master of Ceremonies for this engagement. Media Director, Mr. Mark Simue, I call upon you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tileshe. Thank you very much, friends, and we wish to welcome the ZESCO staff to this important media engagement. As a media team for the United Party for National Development, it is our considered view that in order to fill the information gap, it will not help to hear us every time we discuss. We thought that it would be important for us to get technocrats to engage with members of the public, especially coming from statutory institutions, so that members of the public are guided accordingly. And I wish to also thank members of the press for making it to this place. We are always indebted to your commitment in operating as a conduit for information dissemination. I want to give obviously particular recognition, and Madam Chama will have to correct, since the other one we are doing some corrections on is being used for streaming. We have the delegation from ZESCO who will be introduced by Madam Chama, who is the Director of Public Support Services, to come up front and introduce the panelists that will take us through the conversation, and many others that may not be part of the conversation. Madam Chama, it's your time. Thank you.
Good morning, colleagues. I say colleagues because that is my background. I ran a beat, I presented a diary, I chased up sources. So this is not strange territory. So I'm glad to be here with you. And on behalf of my colleagues from ZESCO, we are glad, thank you, Director, for giving us the opportunity to come and speak to you and through you, the nation. First off, I would like to say that the crisis we find ourselves in is not something that anyone would have wanted. So we sympathize, we empathize, and it's not something that we take lightly. We work hard every day towards finding solutions. And what you will hear when the technocrats, when the experts on ZESCO that are seated to my left stand up to speak, they'll be giving you information that is true, that is accurate, and that is verified. So if you allow me at this point to introduce them, starting with my far left, we've got Engineer Anthony Mumba, who is Senior Manager, Energy Management. Next to him is Engineer Ndabandi Chupeta, who is Chief Engineer Dam Safety, and immediately next to me is Engineer Boniface Yasipa, who is Senior Manager, Distribution. So please do listen attentively, and we try to explain things as simply as we possibly can. And of course, there will be questions, and we'll tackle that when the time comes. So thank you. Without much ado, I will give it back to the Director of Service to take us through the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this particular time, I would like to ask our first speaker to come and give his presentation.
Thank you, sir. Media Director, Director of Corporate Services, and all in the house. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, my name is Ndabandi Chupeta once again, and I'm making the presentation on hydrology. It's a very brief presentation. I don't want to go deep into hydrology. I will just present on one slide. But from that slide, I'll talk to you, and I hope you get the gist of things. So what we have there. What we have cast is a Zambia hydrological catchment map. This map shows the areas it shows the demarcation of the catchments for the various river systems that we have in Zambia. So if you look at this dark, greenish shaded area, that is the Zambezi catchment. What we mean is that the rainfall that falls in this area, including this area here, and that region there, finds itself into the Zambezi River. Rainfall that falls in this light green area, shown here, it finds itself into the Kafue River system, where we have our about 3 generating stations and the reservoir. On the Zambezi, there is the Kariba reservoir. So water captured on the northern parts, on the upstream of Kariba, finds itself into the lake Kariba. The water captured here and that there finds itself downstream of the lake Kariba. Equally, on the Kafue here, the rainfall that falls in this region, up somewhere here, finds itself into our reservoir, the Itezi. That's the main reservoir on our Kafue system. Rains falling on this section here finds itself downstream of the reservoir, so it's not captured in the reservoir. This brown area there is the Luangwa catchment. We do not have any hydropower station on this catchment. So water captured by the Luangwa River finds itself in the Zambezi River after the lake, after Lake Kariba. It does not go into the lake. It goes downstream to Kabora Basin. On the northern parts, we got this catchment area and 2 catchment areas, Tanganyika and the Chandishi. Here we operate some mini hydropower stations. Mini in that they are small hydropower stations. So their capacity is quite small compared to the stations that we have on the Kafue River. Yeah, so that is that on the catchments in Zambia. So, what happens in hydrology? For the Zambezi catchment, the managers are Zambezi River Authority. ZESCO does not manage that water when it gets to Kariba. Zambezi River Authority manages that water and gives us allocations depending on what they have seen, what they have projected will be received during the season. On the Kafue catchment, ZESCO manages the resource. So on the Kafue system, we allocate the water to the power stations there. We allocate the water because once we get a forecast, I'm sure most of you are aware of the forecast, the forum that took place, I think 2 to 3 weeks ago, the ZESCO, which gave the forecast for the upcoming season, starting in October, going forward, 2025-2026 rainfall season. They forecasted a normal to above normal rainfall, which is good, but let us keep in mind that it is similar to what was forecasted last year. So then, once we get the forecast, I'll tell you the process. Once we get the forecast from ZESCO, which is the regional climatic forum, we are given analog years. Analog years are simply years they give us, which are likely similar to what the new season will be like. So, us in hydrology, the Department of Hydrology, we keep historical information of the rainfall, of the river flows on the Kafue and some other rivers from way back, more than 30 years. We have that historical record. So when we are given analog years, we are told this coming season, it will be like this year or that year. Those are years in the past. We go back into our archives, pull out that information, and using some methods, which I think those are technical, we arrive at the amount of water that can be harvested during that particular season. So for the coming season, we will have an idea of the amount of water that we will receive. Then using that water, because it doesn't come all at once, it comes in a series. It goes up, comes down. You know the flows as it is raining. When the rain starts, the flows also start increasing in the river up to a peak at a certain time in the year, in the season. Then after that, as the rains finish, they come to an end, they start dropping. So even the flows in the rivers, they behave in the same manner. So we know, we project that at a particular time, there will be certain flows, at a particular time, there will be certain flows, and we can get so much generation from that water. So we do that projection, and we project a generation plan, which we hand over to our colleagues from system operations for consolidation, because the total generation or energy is not only from hydro. It also comes from other sources, but that would not be fine. Our colleague from system operations. So hydrology, basically, that is what we do. Yeah, we look at the forecast and develop projections, allocate the water, and come up with a generation plan, which we call an energy budget for the season. So we do that for the curfew system. And the small hydros, which are scattered on the northern parts of the country. I think I can end there for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That is Engineer Ndabambi Chipeta, is Chief Engineer Dam Safety, with that presentation on Zambia's hydrological map, which we have been given for us to have that understanding. Let's just give him a clap of applause for that wonderful presentation. At this particular time, allow me now to call upon Engineer Collins Mumba, who is a Senior Manager, Energy Management, to come and give his presentation. So I call upon you. Thank you.
So, good morning once again, Media Director, Director of Corporate Support Services, ZESCO, members of the media, and I say, ladies and gentlemen, my name once again is Mumba Collins, Senior Manager, Power Trading and Energy Management at ZESCO. So we heard from the previous speaker, my colleague, summarize the process that happens under hydrology, where they move from the forecast to make predictions and then come up with an energy budget. And like he mentioned, that information then comes to system operations and the power trading for us now to run the system to ensure that power supply is reliable and secure. So that is our mandate within the corporation and also within the Zambian power sector. So in my presentation, I will start by talking about the current situation in terms of imports and exports. So how does this slide fit into the previous presentation that you had? So you may have heard that from the sources within this country, that is within the Kafiwe Basin and also the Zambezi Basin, as ZESCO, we are then able to say this is how much energy we have available to run for that upcoming year. Because normally these processes are done a year before. So when we are planning for 2025, that planning is done in 2024. So when that information comes to us, we then aggregate the sources of supply. Because remember, ZESCO owns generation plants in this country. But also there are other players. For example, there's Mamba, there's Dollar Energy, there's Daisy. So all these other sources of supply, we have to aggregate them to come up with what is the available energy that we can then supply to our customers. But another input into the available energy is the imports. And also the exports affect that equation. Now, you are all aware that we have passed through a number of rainfall seasons that haven't met our expectations, and therefore our reservoirs are not at the levels where we desire, what we'd call the ideal situation. The ideal situation is where within our own country, we should have enough energy, enough power to supply the needs of the economy of this country. So in this situation where our own sources are not sufficient, we then have to fall upon power that we import from outside the country. So this slide just shows currently where we sit, that we are on average importing on a daily basis in the hours of the day, 24 hours, around 238 megawatts. So we need that 238 megawatts to help us manage the power supply that we're able to give at the moment. In terms of exports, on the ZESCO side, we have export values of around 106. And this 106 will be effective 1st of October going forward. Why am I saying 1st of October? Because ZESCO is currently reducing on the existing exports so that we retain more of that power to supply the national economy. So come 1st October, we'll be sitting at 106 megawatts. This figure of 106 was originally above 520 megawatts before February 2024. So the reduction in exports has moved from 520 to 106 where we are. recognizing also that we have other players in the energy sector in this country. So this slide also shows that there are other players, Greenco and Petrodex. Greenco brings in power into this country to help supply the local demand. They have customers also, so they bring in 25 megawatts. Petrodex is also involved on the export side into the DRC. The table below is speaking to the power that transits through the country. So what do I mean? It enters the Zambian border, but then exits at the other end, depending on where that power is being supplied. So we have those three players, CEC, EN Power, and Canona Power, that are involved in importing and then exporting power to those magnitudes that you are seeing there. So maybe let me talk a little bit more on these imports. Where do these imports come from? So we have about 5 sources of imports. The first one being EPM stroke BRZ. Please don't worry about these initials. They stand for utilities or organizations that we have entered into contractual arrangements to help us bring power. So EPM stroke BRZ is from Mozambique, and we are bringing in through that arrangement up to 140 megawatts, which is a mixture of firm power and non-firm power. The second one is ZESCO NTCSA from South Africa, where we are bringing in about 250 megawatts non-firm power. Then we have EDM, the fourth one, from Mozambique, with 90 megawatts firm power for off-peak hours. So when I say off-peak hours, I'm referring to the hours between 22 right up to the end of the day, beginning of the new day, up to around 6 hours. Those are the off-peak times in terms of how we characterize the hours in a day. Then finally, we have the Southern African Regional Competitive Market. So this is like an auction market, where once power is available and the price is suitable, ZESCO does participate on a daily basis to bring in some more power. Because sometimes this market can offer a very good price. Sometimes, depending on the availability of power, the price can also become quite prohibitive. So we normally buy power during those times that the price gives us an advantage to bring in adequate volumes. Now, where do we stand in terms of the generation in the country as well as the demand? The table just summarizes the remaining months of the year. And of course, the closer we get to those months, there are revisions that are made depending on the changes both on the supply side and on the demand side. So looking at September, which is the month in which we are, the total available generation in Zambia is 1,544 megawatts. The row which is talking about net interchange, this is what is relating to the composite or the result between import and export. So when we say net interchange, we are then focusing on finally what is coming into the country to support our ability to supply load. So that figure of 187 megawatts means that we are importing 187 megawatts on average to come and augment the 1,544. So it then gives the net available power now that as the system we have to supply both to the residential, commercial, and industrial customers, as well as the mining houses. So at that point, where now I've stated what is the available energy, my colleague now from distribution will then come and say how they then manage a portion of that available energy to ensure that we support the economy in the country in terms of the domestic, industrial, and commercial customers. I think I end my presentation. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Engineer Collins Mumba, Senior Manager, Energy Management, giving us that illustration. And I'm pretty sure members of the press have picked the story where it is with regards to our energy situation. Our next speaker is Engineer Boniface Siasipa, who is Senior Manager, Lusaka Distribution Control Center. I hope I pronounced the surname correctly, sir. It's my honor to call upon you to give your presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so good morning, everyone. I won't go into the protocol like my colleague. So good morning, everyone, and we are thankful that we are part of this media engagement, just to provide insights into what basically goes on in as far as power supply is concerned in the country. And so my name is Boniface Siasipa, responsible for basically distribution of supply in the country. So we basically have 3 established control centers for now. We have Lusaka, Ndola, and Kitwe. And then the other outfits have smaller centers that are able to manage this power supply. So in terms of the content, I'll basically look at the introduction, then the allocation, the schedules, then compliance, applied compounds, the challenges, and then conclude. So in terms of load shedding as part of the introduction, load shedding is basically an intentional activity that you carry out because you have because every equipment has a rating. So you have to match what you're going to get out of that equipment and the capacity of that equipment. But the kind of load shedding that we're having is because of diminished energy or the diminished water levels. As you all know that 85% of our generation comes from hydro. And so any effect, as communicated by my colleagues, any effect on the generation will affect the demand. Okay, so we basically carry out load shedding to match supply and demand itself. Okay, so that's an intentional activity. Then we develop load shedding schedules or the plan itself. So put in place a schedule or a plan that is meant to guide us in terms of equity, which group am I supposed to see at one particular time. So we need a schedule so that we are guided in terms of how we are going to implement the load shedding itself. And so the load shedding is temporal. It's not the lasting solution. We're just carrying out this activity because we have the current challenge. So we need to safeguard the power system. Now, sustainable power demand allocations. So we developed these load shedding plans, and so before the plans are developed, we are allocated in terms of from power system or from system operations. We allocated how much power is available for giving residential, or basically let me say distribution customers. Okay, so after that allocation, then what do we do? So we'll sit and come up with the plan itself. So in the plan, we are considering, because remember we have just basically lines, right? The power lines that are moving in different areas. So what we'll do is that we'll try and look at the power lines that are feeding critical customers from central loads. That will be one group, because that group we are not going to touch it, but keep them on constant supply. Then have power lines for industries, then power lines for agriculture, power lines for commercials, power lines for markets, and power lines for residential. So that's the criteria. So we'll put these lines into these groups to assist us now come up with the actual schedule in terms of who should come on at what particular time. Now, this particular slide is just basically showing how much currently for this particular week, how much has been allocated to distribution. So, on the first column is basically looking at our regions, which some of them constituent provinces or they constitute towns. So Ndola is a region that has basically Ndola region and the Rwanda. Then have Northern, which is looking at the three provinces, Mchinga, Northern, and Luapula. Then Kitwe has two towns, that's Kitwe town itself and Muflira. Then the Northwestern, it has Chingola town and Northwestern province. Then Lusaka, of course, has Lusaka province itself. Then Southern is looking at Southern province and Western province. And Central, looking at Central province and Western and Eastern province. So in terms of allocation, the historical numbers, which are reference numbers, that was before we started loadshedding. So the historical numbers are the ones that are guiding us in terms of how much power should be given to each particular region. Okay, so those are historical. The second column is looking at historical average values, and then what is sitting on the last column basically is looking at how much power now is available for each of these business units that I've talked about. And so the total is coming to 591. This is what is available for distribution to give its customers. Okay, so now this particular slide is looking at now. Remember those numbers that are given us the averages. Okay, in a 24-hour period, we should have consumed so much power. This particular slide is looking at now every hour. What is it that we are supposed to be drawing? Okay, so these are hourly numbers. So starting from midnight up to 23 hours. Okay, every hour, how much power is available for each particular business unit. And so it's giving us, if you can see the numbers there, some numbers are more than 591. That 591 was the average, but you can see that at every hour there's a change in terms of how much power is available for us to use. Okay. Then the schedules. Like I said, these schedules are developed to basically guide us in terms of how we're going to execute the load management itself. The schedule that I'm going to show are basically for this current week, which is running from Sunday, 21st to Saturday, 27th. And then these same schedules are used by us in the control center to execute the actual load management exercise. Then also used by public relations, corporate affairs, for communication to the public, and also ZESCO call center for management of complaints from customers, and also the maintenance department so that they align their maintenance activities to the load shedding plan. So these are the various groups or people or departments that make use of the schedules that are developed. So I'll quickly run through. I'm sure these you have seen them in the media. This is the Lusaka schedule where we have those different groups. This one is for Southern, that has both Southern Province and Western Province. This is for Central. The one on top is for Central Zone, which is basically Central Province. Then the second, the one at the bottom, is for Eastern Zone, which is Eastern Province. This is Ndola schedule, which is showing the schedule for Ndola. Remember, I said the Ndola region has both Ndola Town and Rwanda Town. So the second one is for Rwanda. Kitwe region, which has both Muflira and Kitwe. And Northwestern, which has Northwestern Province, we have Chingola and Chirabongwe. The Northern Province, which is looking after the three provinces, Chinga, Wapula, and Northern. Then this particular, I thought I could maybe speak to this so that it's clear in terms of what we do. So remember I said we have those, from the criteria, we would have grouped, identify the feeders which feed different areas. So we have groups, like I said, A, B, C, M, those groups. Okay, so this particular slide is showing the group which we are calling Group E, which is the residential group. And what we have on this particular group are actually the substations on the second column, and the feeders, okay, and then the next one is just basically results from SACA, and then the average, the voltage, the load, and then the apparent power and the active power. So what it shows is that in group E1, when it's 22 hours to 0.6. So at 22 hours, this person will start going to all the substations and start, okay, you start closing those lines until all the lines are switched off. Okay, if there's another one that's supposed to come out, so we have another list just like that. So this is the guide. This is using basically to manage the load management in terms of when do we switch on customers. So we use this particular table or this particular app to know which particular lines. So the person in the control center doesn't have to think of which lines to think or to switch on. So he just basically goes to this and begins to switch on or to switch off. Yeah, so then the next item is on compliance itself. So, so compliance is in two parts. We basically have to comply to the schedule. Remember the schedule that we've given the customers. And also we have to comply to the allocation. Because remember the allocation is based on what the power that is available at that particular time. So these are the two compliances that we need to adhere to. Okay, so this particular slide is now basically trying to show us in terms of, that was for yesterday, 24th, yesterday. How did we do in terms of compliance? So if you check, we have group TLH, group A, group D, up to, then I'll talk about TLH. That's the group for towns, for the compounds, which the minister talked about. So it's supposed to switch on at 07 to 22 hours with a planned duration of 15 hours. Now, if you check in terms of the actual supply hours for yesterday, we went up to the team. So we didn't do the 15 hours because of network challenges and power system constraints. Okay, so when the power system is able to allow and the network is okay, we're able to go up to 15 hours. But sometimes we supply less than 15 hours. Like yesterday, the supply was up to 13 hours. And I'm sure you can see that when you look at the supply hours, which is the 15, 6, 7, 7, 7, and the 10, when you compare to the actuals, they're actually relating. We are basically complying with what we have communicated to the customers. Okay, then WF is a group that is basically that was created to support the farmers for wheat irrigation. So if you check, there's F there, which is for farmers, but then we have also WF, which was meant to, because the farmers requested for more hours for them to go to irrigate. So we for the lines that are feeding wheat farmers, we created that as a group. The notes on non-compliance, I would say too. In terms of compliance to the time that we are supposed to switch on, we generally we check within 30 minutes from the time that you are scheduled to go supply. You should have supplied. We can't switch you on exactly at 10 hours or at 08 hours. So there is a bit of delay. So if you check the previous page, you will see that we actually give supply to customers within the 30 minutes from the time that has been communicated to the public. Then what would cause sometimes delays? If there's no problem, then we will take within 30 minutes. But remember that when we are supposed to switch you on, it's possible that that particular circuit has a problem. So we could have a fault or a vandalism on that particular circuit installation. So even if we have switched on from the control center, there are some customers that will soon wear off, okay? And those customers, it's not that we haven't switched on, it's because there's basically a fault on that particular network, which is affecting the restoration of supply. Sometimes it's due to maintenance works. I know we do communicate. If you are registered, we are supposed to be receiving SMS alerts to notify you that you have there are maintenance works in your area. So when the maintenance works is being carried out, of course, when we switch on, those customers will still not have supply because there are works that are going on. But what we generally do is that after the maintenance works, we'll try and switch on those customers. And those are the times when you notice that power, instead of coming at 8 hours, it comes at 18 hours. It's because that particular circuit where you are on had maintenance works going on, and we're only restoring after the maintenance works. Sometimes we have the SCADA system giving us issues, and so when someone is supposed to switch you on, then the system is not available at that particular time, and so it means that we have to send someone to go and manually close that particular circuit. And then the other one is the manual operations. So not all centers have SCADA. Or not all business units have SCADA. And so some of the operations are dependent on manual movements. People have to drive to these areas where we're supposed to switch on and switch off. So there will be that delay because people have to drive with traffic. So there will be those movement challenges that might affect the time that we're supposed to switch on. Then compliance with allocation. This particular one is now showing, remember the first one was talking about compliance with the schedule. This one is showing now compliance with the allocation. Remember they recommended, what we've been given is that column where you have 591 there. Okay, then the next column on the right is showing the average load, okay, which is 732. That was yesterday, 732. In other words, what we drew from the system and distribution was 732 megawatts against the 591. So the 141 is basically a power that we have drawn from the system without being planned for. And the first column here is showing the second column is showing the demand. Yesterday we had our peak demand in terms of supply compounds, the high density townships, I think trying to fulfill the government policy on support to the vulnerable people. So the understanding is that these compounds have people that are vulnerable and they need to be supported. Okay, so the support is being given in a phased manner, and of course the first selection of compounds are 21. Okay, and more compounds will be brought on board depending on the power supply situation. And also these compounds actually get in between 10 hours and 15 hours depending on the power supply situation. So the first list, the initial list that we have for the compounds selected for more hours of supply, those Chipurukusu, which is in Dola, Batamantu in Rwansha, Kankore in Mfulira, Musakila in Kitwe, Kanyama, Usaka, Chawama, Chiwoya, Mrs. Mtendere, Mandevu, Baulen, Maternal Garden Compound, and then we have Maramba and Livingstone, Jibu in Livingstone, Linda in Livingstone, and then Sawmills in Livingstone, then Karomo, Bazabuka, and Choma. So this is the first list of township or compounds that were identified to support these vulnerable groups. Okay, so like I said, depending on the supply situation, more compounds will be added to this particular list. So currently, these are the 21 that are receiving between 10 to 15 hours of supply. In terms of challenges, we know that, remember that I said when we, from the criteria, we group these feeders depending on who is being supplied on that particular circuit. And so we have a lot of these critical loads, and so which are being exempted. Okay, so remember that compliance. So because of the exempted loads, so it becomes difficult to meet the demand that has been allocated. Okay, so so that's one issue that we have. Then we have critical circuits as well, apart from being exempted. So we have some that we have given short duration because they are still critical, but we said, okay, we can still touch them. Okay, then loss of visibility for stations. Remember I said, for us, it's a computerized system in terms of how you manage the load management, but there are times when this particular system goes down, and so it affects when we are supposed to switch on customers and switch them off. Then also, like I said, the manual load shedding, where people have to drive from one place to the other to be able to take out these lines or switch them on. Then we also have requests. Of course, when we have these national events, then it means that we don't have to contain those areas to support that particular event. It could be a traditional ceremony. So we exempt that particular area from load management until that particular event is done. Then in conclusion, so we endeavor ZESCO basically to comply with power management objectives. And what we're supposed to achieve is basically compliance with the SAGE itself. So when we have given you the SAGE, our drive is to ensure that we give supply as and when you need it, okay, as the SAGE that has been given. Then we also have to comply with the allocations to ensure that we don't have timeline violations. Because remember, the power supply that has been given on that particular day has been budgeted from the imports and the local generation. So if we don't comply, then it means that we start pulling this power that is unscheduled into the system. Then we also have a mandate to support economic activities. Like I said, and vulnerable customers. Like I said, we have grouped this data so that we know, for example, which lines, or this group is for the industries, what do they need, and how do we support them? If this group is for the farmers, what do they need, and how do we support them? For example, the farmers have said, with them, they cannot get supply in the night, because that's when it's ideal to get. So we will basically implement as requested, so that we keep the economy running and also support those vulnerable people. Then also we return power system stability. So we have to ensure that the power system doesn't collapse by ensuring that the demand in the system matches with what is available from generation. Because if the demand is higher than what's available from generation, then we can have a system collapse and end up with an outage and a national blackout. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Boniface Siasifa, for that elaborate presentation. So there's a map that will have to be displayed as we get into the question and answer session. And I believe this session will be able to bridge up any missing information with regards to what the three speakers have presented. So, Director, as we view the map, I also would like to take opportunity to invite members of the press to ask questions based on the presentation that we have been given. So kindly indicate by raising your hand, introduce yourself and the media institution that you are presenting. Okay, so there will be just a few remarks that will be given to just introduce the map that we are looking at as we prepare to ask those questions.
Thank you very much. I think before us is a picture of the Zambian map. So, what are we trying to show? You may be aware that there is a policy directive and undertaken by the government of the Republic of Zambia to onboard 1,000 megawatts before the end of the year. So this map is speaking to that undertaking. So you will see various locations showing the various individual projects that are being undertaken, some by ZESCO, some by other players or other developers in Zambia, which are all meant to add to the realization of the 1,000 megawatts. So briefly, you may be aware that ZESCO, through its subsidiary, did commission the 100 megawatts Chisamba solar plant. So you can see that there is also Chisamba number 2 or phase 2, which is earmarked with an additional 100 megawatts. If you go to Serenge, which is the one in orange and green there, Serenge, which is Mairo, there's 25 megawatts, There's 25 megawatts that has already been commissioned. And there are plans also to bring on board phase 2 of Mairo with a quantum of 85 megawatts. So this is being undertaken by an independent developer. So equally, you can see that at Kasama, we have 100 megawatts, which is upcoming. Mansa, there's 50 megawatts that ZESCO is developing. At Kafuego Joa, which is the KGL down there, near Siavonga, on that map, there's 100 megawatts also that is coming up. All these are solar projects, remember. Then also in Mumbwa, in Choma, and Livingstone, with those indicated values. So this is an undertaking which is ongoing, of course, to try to ensure that we meet the 1,000 megawatts of solar by the end of the year. Thank you. I thought I should just give you that overview.
A clap of applause. Members of the press, we have been told that 86, almost 90% of our electricity generation is hydro since independence. And in the situation where we are affected by climate change, the water levels in Kariba Dam have gone down. ZESCO has not been able to produce to capacity to meet the deficit that has been created. The New Dawn administration, out of various MOUs that the government has been signing to find a solution, this is the journey that we have been shown by that map of 1,000 megawatts by December this year to reach. That is a commendable job under this administration. I think we deserve a hand of applause. If there was leadership to have done this before, would have been better be prepared. But that is just to show you that we are serious in our undertaking. At this particular time, I would like to invite members of the press to ask questions. So kindly raise your hand, introduce yourself, and the media institution you are representing. can see a hand there. Another one there. Yes, I'll start with you, sir.
Good morning. My name is Nkoma Tony from the Mass Newspaper.
Maybe you move to the front.
Or you can come.
So
You can
that
come.
the mic for those that are doing recording.
And those that are asking,
Yeah,
you can please come this side so that we can quickly take note of the questions.
Good morning, Bonnie. My name is Nkoma Tony from the Mass Newspaper. I just wanted to find out the farmers, you mentioned of the farmers who have asked for exemptions, which part of the country those farmers are coming from. Then I just wanted to find out the other question was, whenever there are load sheddings, I think ZESCO attributes to maybe the problem with Mamba. So I was wanted to find out, do we have other competitors other than Mamba to give us the power supply? Then recently the Minister of Energy, Mapozo Chikwate, mentioned that the public are receiving 10 to 15 hours, and then ZESCO also recently said we are only 5 to 6 hours. But then what is being experienced right now, what is being lived on in the compounds is not what has been pronounced. So maybe ZESCO can give us what is the clear map in terms of that. And then, like Mr. Shesh mentioned, that we've since independence depended on 86%, 92 dependence on hydro. For the part of ZESCO, are we short-sighted to keep on depending on hydro? Maybe just wanted to find out from the government. Thank you so much.
So another hand.
Thank you. I've got a mic here. Is it okay if I ask for you?
Oh, perfect.
Sure. My name is Oswald Kapong. I'm from Bright TV. And my question goes to Mr. Siasipa. I'd like to get a clarification from even the question that the previous my colleague just asked. Is it 10 to 15 hours of power supply, or between 10 hours and 15 hours? Because we had that issue going on social media yesterday where there was a clarification which was saying that the compounds are receiving power between 10 hours and 15 hours, or is it 10 to 15 hours? And if indeed it's the compounds are receiving 10 to 15 hours of power, how does that get to affect now the other areas and other regions which obviously do also need the actual power which is being supplied to these areas which are being classified as vulnerable? Thank you.
Okay, let me have the last.
Good morning, everyone. Darren People from Newsflash Media. My question is very simple. In terms of the purchasing that's happening from outside of Zambia, what is the budget, the daily budget of money that's being spent to bring in power?
Thank you. I will allow the speakers to make responses to the questions that have come, right from the high table. Yes.
I'll start. I don't know what the name of it. I think this is Tony. This one. This is a Tony. Yeah. So the farmers and the exemptions. I don't know whether the slide wasn't that clear. What I said is that first of all, we have a group of farmers. Okay, because the needs are the same. So currently, the strategy or the duration of supply for the farmers has been ranging, has been averaging 8 hours in the power and in the night. Okay, then I say the farmers union during the wheat harvest season, they requested that the 8 hours was not adequate for them to do the irrigation adequately, and so they requested that we adjust the hours of supply. Their initial request was 12, but then engagements were held because of to avoid the impact, because the longer we keep them on supply, the more the impact is going to have again on the system. So we settled on the 10 hours. So the farmers, in short, are not being exempted. We have only given them extra hours. We adjusted the hours from 8 to 10 to allow them to irrigate. So there is no farmer who has asked for exemption. Hope that is clear. I'll leave the other for competitors for Mambo and the effects of Mambo now on the power supply. Then hours of supply for compounds and residential. So first of all, from that same schedule, you saw that there were different groups that are categorized as residentials. Okay, so depending on the level in terms of power supply, in terms of at what level we are, in terms of how much is available, it will determine now how many hours we are supposed to give. So the table shared is showing that we are allocated currently 591 megawatts. Okay, so from that power allocation that we have, it has enabled us to migrate or change the durations of supply for customers from, I think you noticed that we're coming from 3 hours and have gone to 6 hours now. So our current duration of supply for all the residentials is sitting at 6 hours as in basically currently. Okay, those other groups I've talked about, the industries and commercials and farmers, they have retained that same duration because remember the aim is to support the economic activities. Okay, so the current duration of supply for the residential is 6 hours across the country. Now the issue of the compound, when a decision was made that we needed to support the compound, first of all, it's coming from an improvement on the power supply side. Okay, remember he talked about pulling back supply from these exports. So an improvement in the power supply side would result into an improvement on the demand side. Okay, so now in order to meet the policy that the vulnerables have to be supported, so that extra power that has been made available on the power supply side is what is actually allowing us to be able now to give customers those compounds for 10 to 15 hours. So residentials are not being affected. Of course, we have, these are different categories. So we have low density, high density, and medium density. So the vulnerables are believed to be in the high density areas or compounds. Okay, so but then the other customers, remember, we have a lot of these townships or these compounds. But in the first phase, we have only those 21, and those are the ones that are getting the longer hours of supply. Now, coming to the question from Oswald, in terms of clarification. So the 10 to 15 hours is the duration, is how long they are going to have supply. It doesn't mean that we are supposed to switch them on at 10 to 15 hours. So it means that according to the schedule that I showed you, it was showing that currently the schedule is showing that we're supposed to switch them on at 7 hours and switch off at 22 hours. That's the period from the planning, given the power supply availability. So if everything is equal, then we're supposed to have, customers are supposed to have supply from 7 to 22 hours, which is the period of 15 hours. Okay, but if the power system can't allow, then at least we can give them up to 10 hours of supply. So the minimum that we're able to give is 10 hours, and then the maximum is 15 hours, just to support that group. I think I've answered all the questions.
Thank you very much. I think I picked 3 questions that I'll attempt to answer from a system operations and trade point of view. The first one was, is there competition to Mamba? Now, in answering that question, I want to draw you to the fact that in 1995, when the Electricity Act and the Energy Regulation Act was devised, I think one of the objectives was to promote liberalization in the energy sector. So many players were already in operation before 1995, and some more also came on board. So we have this group, I think you may have seen in one of my slides, where I was speaking to IPPs. So these are independent power producers, of which Mamba is one. The generation fleet in this country comprises ZESCO-owned generation and IPP-owned generation. So under ZESCO, it's the Kafue Gorge, Kalbano Plant, Victoria Falls. Those are 100% owned by ZESCO. Now, when you come to the IPPs, there is Mamba. So, does Mamba have competition in the IPP area? Yes, there's no lineage. 105 megawatts. Mamba is currently 300 megawatts. We have Lunsen for hydro. We have ITPC, even if ZESCO has a stake, 50% stake, but it's also an IPP. And there are many more in the pipeline. So any willing developer can come on board based on the policies of the Electricity Act and the Energy Regulation Act, and recently the Open Access regulations of 2024, where now a developer of a generation station is allowed to interact with an end-use customer, a factory, a mine, by allowing them to use the ZESCO network, the CEC network, or the network of whoever owns that network in a transparent and non-discriminatory way. So Mamba has other IPPs that are also playing in that space. Thank you. Now, the other question is that I picked was, in the face of this hydrology problem, or the drought problem that we have faced in the recent past, I think the words used was ZESCO short-sighted. My answer would be absolutely not. Now, what role does ZESCO play? Or has ZESCO been playing in the sector? Remember, where we are coming from before the Electricity Act of 1995 was that ZESCO was the sole off-taker. So if you want to develop a power plant, you had to sign a power supply agreement with ZESCO. So, after the revision of the Act now, anyone can be an off-taker. So now, what does it mean to be an off-taker? So if a developer comes and says, I want to develop a coal-fired power plant, the role that ZESCO can play is to facilitate the signing of that power supply. So once we go into that contractual arrangement, we are helping that developer bring on board that diversified power plant. Another way would be ZESCO itself going in to develop. But there's another way to look at it. You can facilitate by signing these power supply agreements with the various developers, which is what ZESCO has done. Ndora Energy is a heavy fuel oil power plant. It's not hydro. And they have the power purchase agreement with ZESCO. Mamba itself, for them to operate, they must sell that power to someone. And the contract they have for selling is with ZESCO. So ZESCO is promoting these diversified sources by all these power supply agreements that we enter. I think the third and the last one that I got was speaking to the imports that we are currently undertaking to come and help bridge, the deficit that we are experiencing in the country. And I think the question was, what is the budget? I think I showed 5 sources of supply, and obviously they are depending on the amount of power that is available and comes. We are looking at anything between 15 to 20 million in a month, just to facilitate those imports. Thank you.
There's a clarification that is 15 million to 20 million.
Oh, sorry.
United States.
Apologies. Well, this is 15 to 20 million US dollars.
That's how much ZESCO is spending on power imports to cushion the current deficit. There be no any other question. I would like to call upon, okay, I can see two, okay. Please, we can ask from there quickly, or you can come forward if you don't have a mic. Can we have the last stage before I go upon? Okay, you can come to Madam.
Good morning, Barnabas Zulu from Daily Nation. So basically, I've got 2 questions for the panel. The first one is on the issue of power importation. There have been issues that you are using a third-party company, Canona, to import power on behalf of ZESCO. Now the question is, the people of Zambia want to know is, why can ZESCO import power directly? Because that's got all the infrastructures, and why are you using a third-party company to do that? And my second question is, you have mentioned Mandevu to be one of the areas in Lusaka which is receiving 10 hours supply of power. I want to contradict that because basically I'm coming from Mandevu, and the people there, they are complaining to say that the 10 hours they're talking about is not something which they are seeing. And people, they normally say that power comes at 23 hours and goes somewhere at 02. So I would like to maybe find out from you, what type of methodology do you use? Do you use automatic switches, or you do it manually? Because people are saying that they are not receiving that 10 hours of power. Thank you.
My name is Margaret Kangwa. Though some of the questions that I want to ask has been taken by my current questionnaire. For me, it's just a clarity that I want, because each and every time I want to get some information from the fire brigade, they always tell me that they are waiting from the report coming from ZESCO. So my question will be a little bit off, but it's in relation to ZESCO. I would just like to find out how many fire incidences in relation to electric shocks that we have recorded starting from last year. I think I started last year finding out on this, but they have always been referring me, no, we haven't had the report from ZESCO. So I would like to have that, if at all ZESCO is in charge of knowing how much reports have been rendered in relation to fire incidences, in relation to electric shocks, and what advice are you giving going forward? Because we have had so many fire incidences that, let me say, allegedly
related to electric shocks? Thank you.
Can I ask my first question?
Ask a question from
Can I
here.
ask my question? I've been waiting for a while. I'm here.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself and the media institution you are representing.
Yes, sure. My name is Jessie Wadia. I write for Vanguard Zambia. I have two questions. Firstly, I'd like to find out, years back there were talks about removing some of the mines lots on the national grid in order to help out the residents. I'd like to find out how feasible that is, or if you are still considering that option. Secondly, you have given us a very good and thorough explanation of why we had load shedding. And by now, I think the Zambians understand that hydropower is not really that reliable. But our concern as media is that here you come, you give us these explanations, and then we hear the politicians be out there saying that we've ended load shedding, when on the ground that is not happening. So I'd like to find out how you are going to be able to mitigate this communication gap. Because I feel it is frustrating for Zambians to be hearing someone talking about ending load shedding when they are actually experiencing load shedding. So those are my two questions. Thank you.
Yes, I'll allow speakers to respond.
Thank you very much. I think the question I would like to take up is the one that is talking about how ZESCO imports power. Now, I think I would like to state that ZESCO imports power directly from the sources of supply. So when I talk about the slide that you saw, there was ZESCO, NTCSA. ZESCO has a contract that governs that supply. If it's ZESA, IPC, Zimbabwe, ZESCO has a contract governing that supply. With EDM, it's the same thing. When we go on the competitive market, it is the ZESCO traders under ZESCO that go on a daily basis and procure that power. So that institution that you've mentioned, that they are a third party, sir, that is not the correct position. Thank you.
Yeah, Mandev. So it's one of the 21, and we have lines that go into Mandev. And I can guarantee you that from the source point of view, Mandev gets supplied between 10 and 15 hours. I'll give an example of yesterday. If you are reading Mandev, yesterday we switched on Mandev around 7:30, 7:23, 7:30, somewhere around there. I can get the actuals. And then at 10:30, Mandev was switched off. The line that goes into Mandev was switched off because of the roadworks on the Northern Saka Road. Remember, say when there are maintenance works or if there's an interruption in the circuit, we do compensate to cover up with the lost hours. So after the works yesterday, Mandev was brought in at 18:30, and we switched off this morning at 5:30. So essentially, they actually have had power for more than, because that's 11 plus, I think 5. Yeah, it should be about 15 hours actually. So now, we have to be very careful, because I tried to explain that, sometimes we can have localized faults, okay? So we can switch on from the source, but it's possible that there is a local fault in the area. And so some customers, even if we have given you 15 hours, it's possible that some customers do not have the 15 hours of supply because there's a fault in that particular area. But that does not mean that the home and name is off. We can have these localized problems, and people only have supply when that particular fault is resolved. So we are giving Mandevo, just like the other townships, either between 10 hours to 15 hours of supply. Then the schedule for 23 to 06, yes, I think the schedule was showing that we have remember I said some of the on those lines that are feeding farmers, where we are switching on in the night, they are not purely feeding farmers alone. So there are still some retentions that are switching on those lines, and so they are getting supply as per the schedule meant for the farmers. Then the other thing is on rotation. Remember that all the retentions are being rotated. Okay, so there are times people have supply between 8 and 14, then 15 to 22, 21, and then between 22 and 04, and then 24 to 06. That's the current schedule that we have. So yes, if for that particular week, that particular area is scheduled to have supply between 22 and 04, that's the time they're going to have supply. But I'll grant you that the following week, the schedule will change to another period. So we are rotating the time when these residential customers are supposed to be on supply. But other areas or other groups have fixed schedules, remember? Because we are supposed to support activities, economic activities. We can't switch on an area or a line that's feeding the market during the night. So we have a group that's purely for the market. So where we switch them on basically in the morning between 8 and 14 hours every day, because that's the period that we think the markets can actually conduct businesses. The other markets, I bet I can mention here that the other markets which were selected, we have 23, I think including Kipre, we have 23 gensets with the same aim that we needed to have these markets supported. So ZESCO has installed these gensets at selected markets, just to ensure that, one, the markets are supplied during the day, and then two, remember I talked about the exemptions, so, and also the rotation, to facilitate rotation. So putting those gensets there allows us now then to have supply for those areas given at different times, and also even basically load shed. So the gensets have supported both the businesses and also the load shedding aspect, because we have now access to those lines to be able to load shed them. Then on the electric shocks and fire incidences, first of all, we have a boundary between ZESCO and the customer. You know, where basically the policy is that where the meter is, it creates a boundary. Anything before the meter, that's ZESCO installation. Anything after the meter belongs to the customer. I agree. Anything beyond the meter is the customer's responsibility. And so accidents can happen from any of these two sectors. Okay? You can have an incident happening on the ZESCO side, and you can also have an incident happening on the customer side. But when these incidences are investigate and advise what would avoid the fire. But speaking generally, remember that the other support for when you have the ZESCO supply, that should be the reticulation for that installation. If there's something wrong with the reticulation for the customer, it means that there isn't that proper communication between the ZESCO supply and the customer supply. And so because of that improper or substandard installation, you end up with shocks, because you are not supposed, when you have a proper installation, you can't actually have shocks, because the design will be such that the customer is protected from any shocks. If there's any failure in the system, it should not affect the customer, but the system, the protection system itself should be able to work so that the customer is not affected. So we need these installations also checked and ensure that they are meeting the standards to avoid shocks and fires. So in terms of the numbers, I don't have them. We have a department that is called SHEC. They are always updating and having the records in terms of how many incidents we have reported. And they are categorized as either happening on the side or happening on the customer side. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is that why? That one there. Yeah, so we will maybe, since I will come to close, I'll deal with the only question that you are raising, so that we allow technocrats to flow. since they can't answer political questions, they want to be answered by ourselves. So in closing, I'll deal with the other part that you raised. So maybe through Mr. Chileshe, we allow other journalists to ask more questions.
Thank you, Director, for that guidance. Yes, there's Mr. Jeff Kapemba there, and my friend here.
Thank you,
Director. Gentleman behind. I'll start with my colleague. You can come and introduce yourself, and the media institution you are representing.
Good afternoon, team. My name is Marcus Marazika from Zambia Daily. My question is basically on the reduced export of power, which you mentioned, from about 500 megawatts to 106, if I quote you right. Does this reduction have positive impact, especially in terms of improving power supply here in Zambia? And also clarity on the 15 to 20 million US. Is it a monthly amount that you are using to facilitate power?
Okay, Mr. Kapemba, you can ask from where you are. I'm sure your mic should be on.
Thank you. My name is Jeff, whose purpose was to power supply. I wanted to find out what is the status now. Are you still rehabilitating? Maybe just an addendum. How are we doing on power trading across the two interconnectors? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the public is appreciating the solar project that the government has initiated. But what has government
Can you
ZESCO?
introduce yourself and the media institution you're representing?
Oh, my name is Bunda, Ashton Kelly Bunda, from the Bunda Corporation Blog Sport, and I write for Rainbow newspaper as well. Yeah, what has the government led from Ethiopia that has initiated the hydroelectric power station, which was supposed to take 6 months, it took 6 years, it took 10 years, and Ethiopia was one of the poorest countries so far. That was hydro, that is hydro. They drew back to hydro. What has the government gained from it? Of course, the public is appreciating the solar projects, and they think, they're asking what are the prospects of building hydroelectric power stations in places like Lower Puna, where the drought is really featured, drought is really being a hit, and that these schedules and the complaints from the people of the public would come to an end someday, and through the cutting of trees by people are using charcoal, which is also causing drought, might come to an end. What are the prospects of coming up with long-term projects of hydroelectric power stations in places like Wapula, especially?
Thank you. This time I would like to allow the speakers to respond. That will be the last question, and then I'm going to call upon Director Corporate Services to come and give a few remarks before I invite Immediate Director to come and wind up on some of the political questions that the experts may not have responded to. So at this particular time, I would like to request the speakers to just respond to a set of this last session of questions that have come through.
Thank you very much once again. I think the first question was a clarification. I think that amount that we mentioned is a monthly bill. So it's monthly. So it will cover for imports that you've planned for a particular month. Now, the other question was the 238 import level that was indicated in the presentation, is it AD, hourly figure, or what? So maybe for us to have clarity and be on the same page, let's look at a day. A day is made up of 24 hours. So normally when you are trading in electricity, you trade on an hourly basis. But then these imports have a profile. So what do I mean when I say profile? I would say they vary. And what causes the import levels to vary is basically availability. Remember, you are buying from somebody. So the process of arranging imports will normally be, if I have a contract with this particular supplier, in advance I will request that supplier to say, let's use your figure of, say, the one that we saw, 230. So for each of the hours of that day, I will indicate I need 230 megawatts. So when that request reaches the supplier will check with their installation and the terms of the contract. And then they'll say, okay, in this hour, I will be able to give you 230. In this other hour, I will not give you 230, I will give you 100. Maybe because they are carrying out maintenance on their network. So you have those variations. So that is what I'm calling a profile. Now, you've sorted out the supplier. The next thing is, if the supplier is sitting in a country which is adjacent to ourselves, then you are assured that power will come without you involving another entity. But if that supplier is sitting 2-3 countries away, it means whatever he has confirmed that he's able to supply, you must then go to these countries which are in between and ask them, is your network able to pass this power that my supplier has confirmed? So there will be an input also. So there will be these variations. So at the end of the day, I'll have these 24 hours with varying amounts. So in reporting to you and sharing information, I'll say, I may give you the maximum in those 24 hours. Just for you to appreciate that on that particular day, the maximum that we were able to get, which could have happened in 1 hour, in 20 of the 24 hours, and so on, is 230. Or we can average out those hours to then give you an average value. Now, coming specifically to that 230. So that 230 is the maximum that we were able to import on a particular day in the month of September. And remember, most of the power that is available in the Southern African region is available in the off-peak times. It's not available during the morning hours when everybody is preparing to rush off for work. It's not available in the evening peak. There's very little power that is available in the region for ZESCO to buy. In the evening peak, when we have knocked off, we are at home. Most of the power is available towards the night, the off-peak times. So that is the times that you'll be able to bring in more volumes or more power into the country. So I hope I've given the background and where that figure is coming from. Yeah. Then I've answered the bill, I've answered the quantum. I think the other question was how ZESCO is doing in terms of power trading on the interconnectors. And I'm sure, sir, you seem to be quite knowledgeable, because when you say interconnectors, I'm sure others are wondering which two interconnectors are those. So the Zambian power system has actually 3 interconnectors. We have an interconnection into Zimbabwe at Kariba. We have another interconnection at Sesheke into Namibia. Then we have another interconnection coming from the CEC network into DRC on the Copper Belt. So I'll expand your question, sir, my answer to include all those 3. Yeah. So most of the power that we are importing as ZESCO to come and mitigate this deficit that we are experiencing, we are using the interconnection through Kariba into Zimbabwe, and also the interconnection at Seychelles into Namibia. So the power, in fact, all the power that we are importing is coming through that. And also, on those same interconnectors, the 2 that I've mentioned, we have other players also bringing in power. So we have these traders bringing power, we have CEC bringing in power over the 2 interconnectors. The role that ZESCO plays in facilitating and overseeing all these transactions is that we have been given the responsibility to schedule. So all these players, when they've commercially agreed their transactions, they will come and then share what quantums they've requested for each hour of that day. And then ZESCO will then check that the interconnection has got the capacity in terms of how it's built to facilitate all those requested transactions. Equally, when we go to the interconnection into Congo, we have all these players trading on that interconnector. Maybe not all, but most of them. So Copper Belt Energy will use that interconnector, besides they own that line. They will use that interconnector to export into Congo. The various traders also have access to that interconnector. So ZESCO also handles the scheduling. And also ZESCO, through the contract that it has with SNEL, will also manage any variations that may come from these various trades. So there's robust trading on all the 3 interconnectors. And we also look forward, when we interconnect to the Eastern African Power Pool, to continue to play the role that ZESCO plays as the control area operator in Zambia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to call upon Mrs. Sama.
Mini grids upgrade.
Okay, I believe Mrs. Sabika, Director, Corporate and Support Services, ZESCO, will come to wrap up and probably attend to 1 or 2 questions that may not have been ably or addressed by the speakers, and thereafter I'll call upon Media Director Maximo to come and give the final concluding remarks. Mrs. Sabika.
I hope I'll be able to put notes just to remind me that I'll be able to capture everything. So thank you so much for the interaction, ladies and gentlemen, for the questions. We've tried to work together with you from the source of our generation, which also happens to be the source of the problems that we're facing right now. We've taken you through the status, and we're taking you through again what the solution is and the solutions that we're looking at. I think it's important when we put it all together to understand that obviously, as you know, energy is a very capital intensive undertaking. There was a comment about building dams and whatnot. And when you look at the solutions that we have presented, we're talking about solar, and I think you've heard time and again that it's the low-hanging fruit, and that is why we are going and pushing harder on solar. But that doesn't mean that we're forgetting about other things. When we're talking about the energy mix and diversifying of sources, we're saying that we can't be mono-dependent. We can't be using one source of generation alone, which for the past many years has been hydro, hence adding the solar. But it's not just solar, we're also looking at coal, we also are looking at other sources. I think we've heard of wind and all of that. But I think it's also important to appreciate that when you talk about diversification, you're also talking about diversifying the geography. If you look at the profile of our generating assets, most of them are in the south of the country. There was a question about going north, and definitely, yeah, that is something that is happening. There's so many resources in the north that we're using. So diversification is happening at source level and also happening at geographical level. That is happening. It's also important to appreciate that over so many years, I think the last power plant, other than KGL, was built more than 30 years ago. I think in the 70s, something like that. I don't know how many people were born by then already. And many factors go into why there hasn't been investment in the power sector over so many years. One of the factors is obviously tariffs. So when you want to attract capital, people need to get their money back. And that has been a hindrance. So when you hear this discussion about tariffs, I would want to implore you to take an interest and see how that has affected, or continuing to pay low tariffs will affect power supply going forward. And ZESCO, obviously, with the partners, are doing so much to get around that. Hence, the generating assets, or rather projects that you heard. And when you look at, say, Chisamba and the timeline within which it was delivered, and that is what we're pushing as ZESCO. If we're looking at a project that would normally take us 18 months, we're saying, let's push, let's accelerate. And so you will see projects coming online and on stream in a space of 10 months, 8 months, just like that. And so that is what we're doing. Talking about protecting vulnerable societies, and I think Engineer Siasipa did speak to the gensets that are around the markets. So it's not the first time that ZESCO is looking at vulnerable communities. But also you will appreciate that not everybody can trade from a market, for example. So if someone is trading within their residential area, they are then now being supported. And ZESCO has obviously been supporting industry. One thing again to mention, when we talk numbers, numbers don't stay static. So that is why, even when Engineer Mumba talked about, gave you the profile projection, this is what we're doing in September, this is what we're looking at for October, just like that. Similarly, on the demand side, ZESCO is connecting new customers every day. That changes the demand profile. So when next you hear a number that is different, don't say we lied. It's just that it has actually changed. Similarly, the import figures, because when you're importing power, as Engineer Mumba said, there's a lot of factors that go in there. It's availability, it is cost, it is, do we have Mamba is down. Someone talked about how we always give an excuse of Mamba. That actually isn't correct. I think when Mamba does go down, I think in the last month or so, we've had 2 instances I can count to. There was an unplanned outage, and we did communicate that. And then there was a planned maintenance. So when that happens, maybe in that instance, we did lose 150 megawatts. Engineer Mumba there gets a job to go and find us that power. If he finds that more expensively, so then we were going to spend more money than he would have budgeted for. So it may not be that 20 million that he said, it will be higher. So these are the things that I hope you have taken from here, but more importantly, to keep the conversations going and to be fact-checking. We are open, we are there. When you have a question, do come to us. I believe that myself and my team are very open. You have a question, you will find your memory. It's not true. We are open. We are open. You come to us, we'll address that. Let me just check my notes if there's anything else that I could have left out. I think, in a nutshell, what the experts have presented and everything gives the picture of where we are. I think the message to send really is that the solutions are in play, and sooner than later, they will come forth, and you've seen them, and they'll keep coming. They won't all come at once, but they are coming. We're making progress. You saw the map there. We've got all those sites which are in development. And next time we meet, perhaps we will show you that now Mansa is at 90% progressed, and this one now has started. So those are the things that we're working towards. So thank you for your patience and your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chama, for making it possible for the ZESCO staff to interact with the media. Colleagues, this was deliberate so that we can get more expertise information on a number of questions we have. I perceive a number of us have benefited and we have had so many questions answered. The beauty with using statutory institutions is that they'll give you information not only from an expertise point of view, but information that you can verify tomorrow. And on our side as a media team, we really appreciate you. Engineer Chipeta, Engineer Mumba, where's the other engineer? He stepped out. Yeah, and the group. We really appreciate, and we hope that this marks just the beginning of more engagements with the press. And you should not be surprised, Madam Chama, when we soon reach out, when our colleagues ask for some of these experts to feature on their programs, you should be ready to perhaps make the engineers available so that they feature at local and commercial radio stations and TVs for more engagements with the public. And I know that ZESCO has its own internal mechanism of also engaging members of the press. And I was hinted to by Madam Chama that I think in a week or so, there will be other engagements so that we are better informed through you, the media. And it's also gratifying to note that obviously the conversation that relates to the ministerial statements that may have been made generically have in a way been addressed with the specifics. It was a learning time for me as well on a number of issues that they were raising, just like many of us. And to also note that the gensets, in a way to address challenges facing the community and the underprivileged, have become a continued undertaking, is also in a way comforting. 21 compounds,